No, not really. It started kind of as a prank in college with some friends. We were trying to come up with a screen name, and just like Samir becomes Sam or Joseph becomes Joe, Kal Penn had always become Cal, so they figured why not split your name, and there you go.
Tell us about the movie Bhopal.
Sure.
What exactly the film is and the character you're putting in the film.
Sure. The film is based on the real life events of the Union Carbide disaster in Bhopal. I play a character named Motwani, who's a journalist, loosely based on a real person, but obviously this is a fictional adaptation. He's kind of a ridiculous guy, so the movie starts out and you realize he's a tabloid journalist who just wants to sell newspapers, writing fake articles. But as the movie progresses, he actually does some research into finding out what's happening with Union Carbide and tries to warn people in his town about the factory. But because he's lied so many times before, people don't necessarily believe him. So it's an interesting character arc for him from start to finish. Obviously I'm not an expert in it, right? I'm just an actor, but of course you try to research as much as possible with regards to the film, talk to the writer-director who did an extensive amount of research on it, and hoping that we are a fictional adaptation, but hoping that you can at least do justice to the subject matter. So the film, it actually follows a few characters through the process, so it doesn't talk about the whole town. Doesn't talk about necessarily what happened after the disaster, but kind of talks about the issue of everything from industrialization to government corruption to jobs, the environment. Those are all a backdrop for what's otherwise just a relationship between human beings. Well, this is not a documentary, so it's a fictional adaptation. So it's just a fictional adaptation. Yeah. Sure, yeah, Rajpal is incredible. So working with him, he and I both have background in comedy. So I really enjoyed working with him on something that was so serious, and learned a lot from him, obviously, watching him work and seeing how he puts his heart and soul into his character, and it was a really incredible experience. I'm so glad he's here today. I actually haven't seen him since we finished shooting. I've seen him in movies, but I haven't seen him in person. So, yeah, he was great. So I like to look for different types of projects, the characters that are a little bit different, right? So if I have a choice, I'd like to do things that are completely different from each other. So the Ravi Kumar movies are very different from The Namesake, for example. I think this movie is very different from both of those. And that's what's enjoyable about storytelling, is telling stories that maybe haven't been told before in a way that hasn't been told before. Motwani speaks Hindi and I do not. So I didn't realize that until we got to Hyderabad and started rehearsing for the film. And I speak Gujarati and English, obviously. We did the first rehearsal and the director looks at me and he says, "Okay, acha, abhi Hindi mein." And I'm like, "Okay, well I don't speak Hindi." He said, "Well, the character obviously speaks Hindi. He's Bhopali in the 1980s." So we got a language coach and a dialect coach, and I had to work on the Hindi and hopefully pulled it off. We'll see what the audience thinks. No, not really. Not as much as I would like to. I read the paper every day, of course, try and get my news as much as possible. But I had worked in politics for about 2 years. Took a break from acting. Now I'm back to acting full time. So I'm not as focused on I think it's changing. I think the concept that all movies are musicals and they're all kind of escapist is one of the perceptions that people have. But certainly Indian cinema is not. It's not monolithic, so it's multifaceted. There are different aspects to it. There's things like The Lunchbox that have been doing very well in the States. Things like D-Day that are not your traditional Hindi movie that also do well there. So I think it depends on who you ask and what the exposure is to it. Now that Bollywood movies are on Netflix, you have a lot more people watching. I think the industry is changing. I think it will always be difficult for performers of color or women in particular, but I think that's changing a lot more rapidly. So, Hollywood now is very different than 5 years ago in terms of the content, the types of shows, the characters that you see on TV. So that's ultimately a good thing. No, of course, there's still a long way to go. I mean, there's still there are plenty of changes that should be made in the film industry and TV industry in the States that are not being made yet, but there's also a lot of progress being made that we should, I think, applaud. Usually, yes. I think it depends on the writer and producers and the point at which you come on to the film. Some actors have a chance to produce and develop projects from the beginning, so they obviously have more of a creative say. There's usually a rehearsal process before you go and shoot a film, so that's your opportunity to kind of ask questions and work with the material. So I think it depends on the situation. Somewhat, but I have to say Ravi Kumar, who was our writer-director, did really a great job with the script and the vision that he had for it. And he knows a lot more about the actual real-life events and then, of course, the fictionalized adaptation. So I think we relied on him a lot more. I don't think any of us wanted to necessarily, make any changes to something that was based in a historical context without knowing the historical context. I didn't go to the film festivals, but we screened the film in New York recently, and the audience was kind of taken aback. I think a lot of them didn't realize that this had actually happened, or how it happened, where it happened, and so it was nice to see the conversations they had with each other afterwards. Oh no, I'm curious. We have to ask the producer what his numbers are, but I hope it does well. I hope that people see it. I hope they take their friends to see it. And I hope it, continues a conversation about situations like this. I don't do them both together, so they've both been separate, which is good. So taking a sabbatical from acting for 2 years and working there was an incredible opportunity, and I really enjoyed it. And then now that I'm back to acting, that's pretty much a full-time thing. So I feel very lucky that the audience let me go off and come back, and they're still watching my stuff. I appreciate that.